We are now ready for part 3. So we've made this pretty table. We've got some highlighting conditional formatting to kind of guide us to see what's happening just on a quick view. And now I want to actually get some summary statistics about what's happening. So I'm going to analyze the data, make a little bit of a table. So to do that, I'm first going to just make a table that is 2 by 10. 2, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, I'm going to kind of want to see this table, so I'm actually going to give this table all borders. All right, and so now I've got my little table, and I'm going to give it, all right, I'm going to title it Data Analysis. And to give it a title, I actually want a title to always go across my data table. So again, I'm going to merge that across. I always like to center it both ways. Oops. And it said to make that table yellow so we can really see it, so I will just fill that with bright yellow. Whew, that stands out. And then I'm going to give each one, this is going to be mean math, so I'm going to put each of these words along here. So once I type all these in, I notice that the words are kind of going over into the other cells right next to it. So I'm going to do that automatic column adjustment by going up between J and K until I get those 2 arrows right here and double click. And now that looks a little bit better. So now I'm ready to find the values. So here are some equations that you need to know. The first one is for mean. So we always say mean, but mean also means average. Excel in this one place, though Excel is very modern, uses a word we don't typically use, which is average. So we double click on average. All right. And I'm going to go over to math. Control Shift down, highlighted all my math, hit enter, and now I have my average math. Now notice this number, if you look at it, I can kind of get a better view here. It's a little small. Make that a little bit bigger so I can really see it. That number, 0.823529, that's kind of a nightmare for me to look at. I can't process a number when I see all of these numbers after the decimal. So something to think about is that I want to actually make that a little bit more readable. So I'm going to get rid of the numbers. Excel will still hold on to all of those in its memory, but this way I can just look up the nice rounded off version right there. All right, so now let's find the median math. So equals median, pops up, I double click on it, go over to math, Control Shift down, enter, and there's my median. And I'm going to keep doing for reading as well. I'm going to copy these. So I got these values for reading. Again, I get all these numbers out the decimal. So I'm just going to fix this again so that it's easier for me to really interpret that number. And now I can see this. This is kind of a little bit interesting. I can see here, I'm going to just make these a slightly different color so they match. I'll just, this is something you can do as well. I'm going to give it a kind of just an orange. You can think of that as another shade of yellow so I can compare. And so what I can see is that the averages are actually really close, and so are the medians. So that's interesting to know that people tend to, in states, the scores you're going to get in math, you can predict pretty close scores in reading. All right, now I want to know how many states actually got over 550. So there's a couple ways of doing it. I could actually just count how many are over 550. That's a little tedious and I'm likely to make a mistake. So I'm going to have Excel do the counting for me. So that's going to be an equation. I'm doing it. So I'm going to hit equals for an equation and I'm going to type in count. Now you'll notice when I type in count, there's tons of ways that Excel can count. I want to count if it is over 550. So count if is what I'm going to click on. And an easy way to program that then is I'm going to come up here. See this fx? Okay, this is my little function. I'm going to click on that and it opens up my function box. So now I can see what is the range. The range is the cells from which you want to count. So clicking here, I want to count math cells. So I'm going to do my highlighting math right there. And then my criteria. And my criteria is greater than, okay? You always read symbols from right to left, so it's bigger, left to right, it's bigger on the left, so greater than 550. Okay. And now I know there are 21 states that have over 550, which is excellent. I want to do the same with reading. So again, equals, count if, double click on that. And then I'm going to go to reading. I can click on my function box, so that helps me. My range is reading is what I'm interested in this time. My criteria is greater than 550. And I'm going to say, okay. And now I know I've got 19. So more states are getting the higher scores in math than reading 2 more states. Now the next one is minimum participation. This is the smallest percent of participants along all these. I've got all these participation rates. Now I could sort them or look through it on my own, but again, I don't want to make a human error, so I'm going to let Excel do it for me. So I'm going to type in equals min, and you can see that come right up, min. And now I just highlight what I want to find the minimum of. So I'm going to highlight, I'm looking at participation rate, Control Shift down, enter. And I can see that my minimum participation rate was 2%. Wow, that is really low. What state was that? We should sort this and figure out what state in the world had such a low participation rate. So we can custom sort quickly by participation rate. Let's go smallest to largest. Okay, North Dakota. Interesting. North Dakota had the lowest participation rate and it was also ranked number 1. All right, so let's go to maximum participation rate. Very similar, equals max. Double click on max, and then I go back to participation rate. The one thing I do want you to be careful here is when you have a freeze, make sure that you're at the very top, because if you started here, you would miss a bunch. So Control Shift down, enter, and I can see that my maximum is 100%, which is great. Now, how many have a participation rate over 50? So that is counting if your participation rate is over 50. So we're going to do that equals count if again. And just bring down that function box. My range is, again, notice how I'm scrolling to the top before I highlight because I want to capture everything. Is that, and I want to go greater than. Now here, if I write 50, I'm going to have a problem because it's percents, so I need to put 0.5 or just write 50%. But if I just write 50, it's not going to know what I'm talking about. Say OK. And I have 25 states. So half of our states have our participation rate over 50%. All right, so we now have our data analysis table, which I found kind of interesting to see how close these sorts of scores were. I found it really interesting to highlight that minimum participation rate. That is amazingly, to me, I find that striking at 2%. And it's really interesting when you actually link it to the state and to see that half of our states are getting over 50%. So we're going to move on now to part 4 in the next video.